The main problem with League of Legends right now. Okay, you know what? I'm going to do the exact same thing I did on that other video. I'm going to make what I think the main problems with League of Legends are right now before we start. And let's see how it compares to theirs. So, main problems with League. Okay, I will say, number one, this is purely a me thing because currently I'm at home in Oceania instead of like bootcamping in Korea. But the queue times are absolutely ridiculous, so yeah, I mean, I don't know, like, that's a personal thing. I don't know if queue times are, I mean, honestly, they're still pretty long, even in other regions. Like, when I was playing in the US, like, queues are pretty long in High Elo, but I'd actually say, for the average player, this is probably not that big a deal. So, you know, I might take it off, maybe we'll put it back on. I'm not really sure. Okay, I would say for me, the biggest problem I have with League is game quality. So I think there are a lot of games in League that are kind of write-offs, you know? Like, not a ton, but enough that it's, like, frustrating, right? And I actually think this is worse in High Elo. So game quality, I think, is generally caused by things like autofills or off-rolls or one-tricks being banned or, you know, that sort of stuff. Like, I hate when you load into a game and there's like a pretty good chance that you've already lost. You know, like if you have 3 autofills and they have none, and you'd be surprised how often that happens. Like, I'm pretty sure that's not meant to happen, but it does. It happens all the time. So game quality, I think, is like a massive thing for me. So let's write that down. Autofills, off-rolls. Like, I think in lower elos, it's maybe not so bad, but like if you're high elo and you've got like, you know, someone who's off-rolled against, you know, someone in their main role, it's completely cooked. Like, I remember this one game I played in Korea where I was off-roll bot lane against Gumayushi's Caitlyn, you know? And it's like, how is that game meant to be fair? You know, it's like, for that to be fair, someone else has to be match made, like, really cooked as well. So, funnily enough, I won that game, but the reason was because, like, so I was 1300 LP against, like, 1700 LP Gumayushi, and then my jungler was, I think, Clid on a 2000 LP account against a jungler who was, like, 900 LP. And, like, what that does is it just creates a game that's, like, so incredibly unfair, like, for both sides, right? The Shaco is getting destroyed by Clid, and I'm getting destroyed by Gumayushi's Caitlyn, you know? And I just, like, I don't know. And the problem with this, and the reason why it's, like, hard to fix, is because this problem right here would be even worse if they changed this, right? Like, if they made it so there were no autofills and no off-rolls and whatever, the game, you know, the queue time would get even worse. So I almost think that this is something that has to be solved, like, it's something that has to be solved through other means. Like, if you could, for example, encourage more people to play in high elo, queues would get, like, faster, and, like, this problem would probably disappear. So I think, we'll write it down later, but I think they have to incentivize playing in high elo almost, like, artificially. We'll talk about this. I'm gonna write this. Well, I'll give examples later. But yeah, I think that's, like, really, really key, because, like, I think there are a lot of people that stop playing in high elo because the queues are too long, which makes the play worse, or they, again, stop playing because they just kind of realize that it's a waste of time. Like, you know, let's say that I'm not a streamer or whatever, right? I'm just, like, a challenger player. If I queue up, and I remember this actually happened to me last year when I was queuing up, I queued up 30 minutes for my jungle to be like an off-rolled one trick, and they jungled, and we, like, lost in 15 minutes. And, like, that just, it's like, why would I play this game? You know, like, if that is what's waiting me when I queue up, like, why would I bother? You know, so game quality is a big thing. Again, like, I think that might have to be solved in other ways, but I think it's a big thing. I would say another thing that I really don't like is, I would say I'm going to say lack of champion diversity. So there's a couple things with this. There is always going to be a meta, you know? And I would actually say that League is probably the most balanced game that I have ever played. But I also don't think it's balanced. You know, in fact, I don't even think it's close to being balanced. It's just that, like, game balance in general, I swear, is, like, really bad. Like, I've never played a game that's even close to being balanced. So, I don't know. I think that, part of why the game feels so stale is because, like, the meta, it's not even, like, a meta so much anymore as it is, like, some of the champions that have been released, unless they just get like completely nuked in terms of stats, like, you know, take Aurora for example. Like her kit is so good that like unless Aurora's numbers just suck, Aurora will be meta for the rest of time, I think anyway. Maybe I'll be wrong, but I think unless her numbers just don't do enough damage, she will just remain here. And the problem is that like champions themselves have like a lot of overlap these days, which means that like, you know, for example, why play Cassio when you can play Talia? And Talia is like a better version of Cassio in almost every way and stuff like that. And so there's a couple ways to do this, or to fix this, I guess. So one is Riot can make like a lot of balance changes patch to patch, you know, like Riot can, you know, like they're doing now, they can buff random shit like Sylas jungle and stuff like that. But the problem with that is like it only really fixes one champion at a time, right? Like it only adds one champion to the pool at a time. I think they really need to solve by focusing on items and runes. Like when items and runes get changed, way more changes about the meta than like one champ at a time, right? Because sometimes it's like, oh, that champ got changed. Like, yeah, sure, +1, we might be able to play that. But when they add like a new rune or a new item, suddenly that like opens up like tons of experimentation, you know, like it gives you a ton of options and stuff that like you can look to play. And again, it's just kind of like, it's kind of fresh, right? Like people just try new things, which is like, I think really important because there are probably champs in this game that are actually better than people give them credit for, you know? But they don't get discovered because like you're kind of, you're not really encouraged to experiment. By the time something new gets like found, everyone else will just like start playing it, right? But I think if there's like a bunch of things that can be found, if there's like a whole bunch of champions that are, how do I put this properly? If there's like 10 different champions that now could be viable, then trying them is way better than like, oh, we're going to try Sylas the moment he gets changed, and now suddenly like, yeah, everyone plays Sylas or whatever. Do you kind of see what I mean? And I also think just the uncertainty of it is really good. Like, if you release an item that makes, say, damage over time champions better or something, there's kind of an uncertainty of, like, you know, now, are these champions actually good or not? Like, can we try them? Whereas it's like, when you see, like, the buff they did to Sylas jungle, it's like, okay, like, there is no certainty. It's like, we don't need to, or sorry, no uncertainty. We don't need to try this. We can just go and do it because, like, we already know it's going to be good. So I think that Riot really need to focus on items and runes. And I guess like another thing I'd really like to see is just in general, I think active items are like a big thing. I don't know, like this is all, I guess this is all gameplay stuff. I guess I should write gameplay here, but I think the lack of active items is pretty boring. I guess it's like not exactly like a problem with the game, but I think that one of the ways to just like make each individual game like more different is to get away from like the same cookie cutter builds, because, you know, that just means that everyone has like the same stats and everything. And there's like a pro and con to that. Like having builds that are a bit harder means that like you've got to be really careful how you do this, because okay, think of a game like Deadlock. I don't know if you guys have played Deadlock, but I played a little bit of Deadlock, and there's so many items to begin with that it's like super overwhelming that I just had like no clue what was going on. You know what I mean? So you've got to be quite careful with this. Like you don't want to add so many different options that the person just has like no idea what to do, right? But again, I think there's like a lot of active items that were like really, really good. Like I always think of Redemption. I think Redemption is like a super, super good item. Like it's, you know, it's quite visual, it's quite powerful, it's pretty fair, right? Like it takes skill to use. I think like that's a good example of like a perfect active item. I think if active items are like generally like skill shots and stuff rather, or like, you know, area of effect and stuff as opposed to point and click, I think that's good. Like I think something like DFG, despite being fun, was probably not super fair. You know, like Prowler's Claw and shit, again, probably not super fair. But yeah, I think active item, I'd like to see more active items in general. So I think for me, those are the biggest gameplay things. I guess like one other thing is just generally like moving the game off rails. So I think this is actually more of like a, oh, actually, while I remember, I'm going to write this so I can rage about it. I think this is more of a pro play thing, but like you guys kind of know how the game is very much like, in pro play, it's pretty much like, okay, they fight for dragon, and then they wait 5 minutes, and they fight for dragon, and then, you know, there's like another 5 minutes of just like doing nothing. So the reason that is, in my opinion, is because like, everything, or like gold in general, is worth a lot less than it used to be. So like gold leads themselves are not useless, but like kind of fake. You know, like nowadays, ultimately the game is one of like Dragon Soul, Baron, or Atakhan, probably. And normally like a combination of the three, right? So because those things have become so important, everything else has kind of become like not important at all. I actually think if you made dragons and Atakhan and stuff less important, each individual thing to fight for would become more important. You know what I mean? Like, I actually think if you made things like jungle camps and scuttles and stuff worth more as the game goes on, like much more, you would see fights and stuff for them. But the problem is, it's just like, who cares, you know? It's like, okay, we both just like handshake, we both just farm, and then, yeah, we'll fight for the big objectives. And personally, I hate Atakhan. I don't mind Dragon Soul because it takes some effort to get, right? Like, it takes you stacking 4. And I actually quite like Baron. Like, I think Baron's pretty fair. It's, like, not easy to do, and it still takes skill to use the buff. Atakhan, though, I hate Atakhan. Atakhan is a permanent buff, and it's very, very easy to do. Like, you can solo Atakhan, right? Like, not most champs, but, like, most junglers can solo Atakhan. And, like, it's not even that hard to do. So I fucking hate Atakhan. I'd love to see Atakhan go on. And I guess, like, okay, my final thing that I hate about the gameplay is the bounties. So I think I really don't like that champion bounties are not split. I would much rather champion bounties were like objective bounties where they're split amongst the team. You know what I mean? Because I think the issue is that, like, if you give a bounty to the wrong person, the game is, like, really cooked. Like, if you, for example, die and give a 1k bounty to Jinx, you're in, like, big trouble, right? But, like, if you die and you gave, say, a 1k bounty to, I don't know, like, not even a support. Like, obviously, if you give 1k, like, Alistair or something, it's whatever. But, like, if you give 1k to, like, Jarvan or something, it's, like, not even that big a deal, right? So I think that's really annoying because, like, what it makes a lot of the game, like, if you have a bounty, you're now incentivized to just, like, do nothing. So I'd way rather this were either shared amongst the enemy team or the bounties were, like, capped lower. You know, like, let's say, for example, rather than 1k, the max you could give was, like, 500 or 600. But, you know, like, you would die once and then you'd have the 500 or 6 bounty again. Something to where it's, like, not just, oh, like, you have a giga bounty and now you can't, you know, play the game, really. Like, you just kind of have to go AFK. And, oh my, I could keep going on this. But another thing I really hate is that, like, bounties, you know, like, killing certain champs is a lot easier than others, right? Like, let's say, for example, that you have, I don't know, like a, I'll give a mid-lane example because I play these champs, but I'll give you, like, 3 examples. Let's say you have a 1,000 gold bounty on Syndra compared to an 1,000 gold bounty on Talia compared to an 1,000 gold bounty on, like, Echo, right? So all of those are worth the same amount of gold. But Syndra is, like, very immobile, very easy to kill. Talia, you know, has, like, quite a bit of HP in her build. She has phase rush, a lot of self-peel. And then finally, you've got Echo, who's, like, really hard to kill, you know? And all of those are worth the same amount of gold, but they're not all equally as hard to kill. In fact, Syndra probably will die at some point, right? There's almost nothing she can do about it if you're against the right composition, you know? Because, like, the problem with power creep in this game is, like, there are certain champions that will just kill you eventually. Like, think of something like Flash Relalt or, I don't know, like an Embessa flank or something. Like, at some point, you will just die to these if you don't have Flash. And I think it's, like, kind of unrealistic to expect to, you know, position so far away that you can't be engaged on. Right, again, it depends what you're against. Sometimes that's true. You know, you might just have to play back and wait until they use stuff. But other times, it's like, I mean, unless you're willing to just, like, do no damage the whole fight, you're just AFK sitting there doing nothing. So I really hate the bounty system, too. Atakhan is good, not as punishing as Nashor, so if you lose the game, it's over. Really, I like, disagree completely. I think Atakhan is way better than Baron in solo queue. I think that Baron, people fuck up in solo queue all the time, and it's only temporary, right? Like, if you survive the Baron, the game's in a good spot still. And, like, they can definitely mess it up. Like, if someone gets picked, their Baron's over. If they, I don't know, they, like, desync their tempo or something, like, they waste the Baron. But Atakhan, it will help you the entire rest of the game, and it's extremely easy. Like, you could probably say that, like, Atakhan is, like, better, sorry, Baron is better in Challenger, maybe, but I genuinely think even in Challenger, I would rather have Atakhan than Baron. I mean, obviously you want both, right? But especially for how easy it is to do Atakhan, I feel like it's very unfair. Because, like, again, Baron is, like, hard to get, right? Like, it's not easy to do Baron. It's in a place of the map that's, like, pretty easy to contest. And it's much harder to do. Whereas, like, a lot of the time, you lose Atakhan, or, like, you know, one person gets chunked or whatever, and Atakhan's just, like, gone. Because it's in a place where, like, you can't really contest, right? Like, that's one of the problems with Atakhan is, like, if your team is losing around Baron, there's still lots of paths to contest. If you're losing Atakhan, though, you know, you can basically only go this way or this way, which is pretty much the same place. I mean, like, you could try go this way, but most likely, unless this turret's alive, you just get, like, wrapped and die. So, I don't know. I think it's... I'm a huge Atakhan hater. I hope it gets deleted. I think I'm almost done with the gameplay section. Is there anything else? Okay, you know what? Last gameplay section, I will say support. Support is a big gameplay thing. So, specifically, the risk-reward of, like, ganking other lanes is support. The thing I hate about this, like, I don't mind that supports can gank mid. I actually think support should be able to gank mid, because if it's just like, you know, if all the early game was like 3 lanes laning, it would probably be pretty fun to play, but it'd be really boring to watch, especially in competitive, right? So, I think it's fine, and actually good for the game that supports can move. The problem is that, like, supports don't get punished nearly enough if the roam or the move doesn't work, you know? Like, they can sit there for ages, and it can be fine. They can, you know, even gank you twice sometimes, like, in a row, and it can be fine. They just, like, don't lose enough. So, I think that's, like, really, really, I think that's really important. Like, I think that it's really hard to balance this in general, but a thing I'm a big believer of is I think something should have, like, rough parity in terms of how easy it is to counter as it is to execute. So if it's, like, really easy to make these ganks work, then they also should be really easy to counter, or they just, like, shouldn't be that rewarding. And I don't think that's the case at all. Like, support can gank other lanes super easily. They can gank the junglers super easily, and they barely lose anything. And it's really not that hard to pull off. So I think that needs, like, a big look at it. But I think overall, that's my issues with the gameplay. Okay, out-of-game things. So... yeah, I kind of talked about this before with, like, the queue times. So this is kind of like, yeah, queue times / like high elo in general. I think that's, like, the issue, but it's not, like, the root cause. You know what I mean? So basically, like, back in the day, people used to play in high elo, like, quite a bit more. And the thing is, like, as fewer people play in high elo gets, like, worse and worse, right? Like, if some people decide, oh, solo queue's, like, not good anymore, and they go and play on a Smurf, they go play a different game, that just, like, feeds into itself, right? It's cyclical. So I think a really big thing would be to, I would actually say, re-enable duo in higher elos. I think that's a pretty controversial take. And actually, as a pro player, I was extremely against duo in high elo. Because Riot is correct, and the duo does make the game, like, unfair. And you could argue that that actually does impact game quality, right? I think it does. It's definitely a negative towards game quality. But I think with duo queue in the game, people are more likely to play in high elo, and it creates much better content. Like, if you guys think back to, you know, like, kind of the golden days of League, there's a lot of, you know, especially for NA, right? Like, duo content was really big. Think of, like, Sneaky Rush or someone. Think of, like, who else? Like, I'm a Cutie Pie used to duo with people all the time, right? Like, I think there's, like, a lot of content, and, like, League in general is, like, more fun to watch if there's, like, yeah, if it's, like, duo, and it's more fun to play, too. So, even though I think duo negatively impacts game quality, I think because duo incentivizes more people to play, you would actually have better game quality, because it'd probably be fewer autofills and off-rolls, because there'd just be more people playing, I think. So, I would like to see duo, and that's, like, that's kind of what I mean by disincentivized playing in high elo. I don't think smurfing is actually, like, as much of an issue as people think. But I do think that, like, it all adds up, right? Like, every person that smurfs is, like, one less player playing in high elo. So I do think what they're doing right now, I mean, I'll write it down, but, like, the nuking smurfing thing, I think it's a good change. I think smurfing itself is fun. I think botted accounts are problematic because it just ends up being, like, so many of them. So I think that's good. What other out-of-game issues? What was the last thing we were going to say? Oh, yeah, like, the general, like, punishment for... say punishment for soft inting. Soft inting is always going to be, like, pretty hard to punish. I don't really mean soft inting in terms of, like, people actually dying a lot. I more mean stuff like, you know, when people, like, follow someone around, like, taking their camps or whatever? Something like that. I mean, I guess that's just hard inting. Maybe it's just like hard inting in general. Because I think a lot of like what people would say is soft inting is more like people just like playing badly or whatever, you know? But I swear there's like quite a lot of griefing that goes on that can't really be detected with like any automatic detection system. And I think because a lot of players see that this is like kind of normal, I guess, in high elo, they feel like they can do it in lower elos too. I think if they had someone that actively punished like win trading, yeah, I'll put like soft inting, win trading, you know, etc. I think if there was someone dedicated to dealing with this stuff at the high level, it would just automatically become like far less common in the lower elos as well, just because people would see that you actually get like punished for it, you know? But I don't think that, like, I mean, win trading is pretty prevalent in high elo, I would say. I think soft inting is like not insanely prevalent, but it's really annoying when it happens, especially because like you know that they're not going to get punished for it, right? Like I think it's pretty rare that someone gets punished unless like they obviously, you know, they like trigger something, right? In terms of, you know, I don't know, they say the N-word or like, I don't know, they drop like 20 deaths or something. So yeah, I think that's what I would like to see overall. And I think some of these are like kind of unrealistic, you know, and some of them are also like personal preferences. But that's kind of like my prediction. I want to see what he has to say though. All right, let's watch this video. I want to watch this video.
Has been in a period of heavy stagnation throughout 2025 so far, despite Season 15 doing its best to shake things up with the new approach they've taken regarding Noxus and Ionia themes, as well as the inclusion of the new Atakhan and Feat of Strength objectives.
Dude, Feat of Strength. Okay, wait, what do we think about Feats of Strength? I gotta be honest, like, I don't even think about feats at all. I think feats are kind of like a failed system, you know? I think they're not like completely irrelevant, but they're almost like not worth thinking about at all. You know, like it's just something that happens. I honestly think feats should be like completely reworked. I'm not sure what would be best. I think it would be kind of cool if feats opened like some more, I don't know, like utility options somehow. Like I think that Riot is really addicted to just like stat sticks, you know, and like in every way, you know, like things like Atakhan XP and stats, or getting rid of active items, or stuff like that. I'd really like to see things that like give you more options, but not necessarily like more power. Like obviously, okay, think of something like Baron buff. You know, like Baron does have power in it, right? But a lot of like what makes Baron strong is like making the minions stronger, right? Like that's a utility thing. And like having a quicker base, that's also a utility thing. So I'm not sure what they could do with feats. But I would like to see feats maybe be like harder to get or something, but be more meaningful in some sort of like utility way. Like a good example would be something like maybe at like the top side and the bot side of the map, maybe there's like a hex gate like here and here, but you can only use it if your team has feats or something. And it's got like, I don't know, like a 4-minute cooldown. So like essentially that gives you like a second TP or something, right? It's not stats. And it's like, it's not so strong. Like you're not going to be able to use it often enough that it's really OP, but it's like kind of a utility thing, you know, like it like adds something kind of cool. Perma Scuttle, MS, and River. I don't like that because it would happen in team fights. Like I like the concept of being able to rotate quicker. I think that's kind of cool, but I don't like it because that would give it to you in team fights. Maybe if it was like out of combat move speed, it could be kind of cool. But yeah, I'd like something like that. Like something, again, that like gives just a reward that isn't more, you know, stats. Riot's addicted to just giving stats, which is the most boring way of doing things.
Towards the game has never been this low. Viewership is down across all platforms, YouTube and Twitch. The game has seen a noticeable drop in monthly active players, and even play has been losing viewership. Previously, LCS and LEC would get concurrents in the 6-figure mark. Now, LTA, as it's called, struggles to barely reach 20k. EU is doing
20k, dude, is that true? Does anyone watch LTA? I mean, LTA's got a whole bunch of issues, right? Like LTA, I think, shot themselves in the foot pretty big with the rebrand and stuff. But 20k viewers that's crazy low. I remember watching like LCS and it was like, yeah, it was easily over 100k, right? That's crazy.
In this department, thanks to the help of Cajal, but I think it's safe to say League is starting to really suffer not just in viewing interest, but also player interest. Granted, the game is nowhere close to being dead. You could still queue up and get into a game reasonably quickly, but compared to how
oh, these guys don't watch my stream, bro. I literally waited in a 25-minute queue earlier.
As the game was back in the 2010s and during the pandemic, this has to be the worst condition I've ever seen League in. A variety of factors are at play when it comes to League's decline over the past few years. In my Why No One Plays episode on it, I talked about all the company decisions they made that backfired spectacularly, but that's not what we're going to be addressing today. I want to focus more on the gameplay aspect of things and how
let's hear the
that's also been
gameplay.
contributing to the game's progressive downfall. Today we'll be discussing the current biggest problem affecting League of Legends. I want to start off by saying obviously there's a lot more than just one problem that has resulted in the game going to over the past few years. A multitude of issues have been festering for quite some time now, like how game quality has been degrading each passing year.
Okay, game
Nowadays,
quality.
It feels as if the outcome of a match is determined not by whichever team has the better players, but whichever has the teammate who mental booms and crashes out first. While they are
Okay, that's not where I thought he was gonna go with that. I thought for sure he was gonna say like the game is like predetermined because of like off rolls and stuff. Yeah, I don't know, but I get it. Yeah, I get it.
Of course, important to consider, it's not like they haven't always been in the game. Feeders and toxicity were present back in the 2010s too. I want to pay attention to something that's notably unique about this time period though, that being the notion that League has been the same for the past 3 years, in my opinion anyway. Nothing has really changed within the game on a drastic level for a while. Even though champions have been getting adjusted, new items have come and gone, and we even got new objectives and so on, the overall feel of the game has been at a standstill since like 2023. Back when I reviewed the Season 15 changes, I couldn't help but notice how bland it felt. Visually speaking, it was excellent that Riot was finally changing up Summoner's Rift to fit a Noxian theme and then later an Ionian theme, but when I saw the patch notes of 15.1, it came off kind of bare bones. There were only 4 notable changes to the game: Atakhan feats of strength, respawning Nexus turrets, and the changes to teleport.
Okay, respawning Nexus turrets was actually a W. I think TP change, kind of whatever in my opinion. Atakhan I dislike, feats I'm whatever, but I think the Nexus turrets are good.
That's all. Don't get me wrong, Atakhan was a big deal, evidenced by how many times it had to get nerfed, and the feats of strength finally gave us tier 3 boots, although only for one team. But 15.1 just didn't have the same game-warping feel as the new season updates of past years. I was under the impression that since they were splitting the year up into 3 parts, maybe they would do something big for the second and third split so that the bulk of 2025 would be evenly distributed instead of all at once. But after seeing the Ionian update and finding out all they really did was change Atakhan, I was underwhelmed by how little there was. It was hyped up to be this big expansion on the same level as the Noxus update, but new game mode aside, it came off like just another patch. Though 2025 was the biggest offender so far, 2024 was also kind of mellow for a new season update. We got Void Grubs, minor structural changes to the Rift, and some new items, but there wasn't a whole system revamp or anything like that. Quite the opposite.
Yeah, okay, they added new items, but like, I don't really remember it actually. I mean, what items did they add that were like really game changing? There was Canic Recurn. I think Canic Recurn is like a pretty big one. I guess, what else did they add in the 2024? Let me actually go back and look. I'm trying to remember because I'm trying to think. Am I just 2024 LOL? I guess it would have been Season 14 LOL update. I want to see because you know, like I've been saying, I think like items are a big thing, but I don't know. Maybe it's more that they need to add like active items or whatever. Okay, yeah, new and adjusted. Okay, they have a ton. Are these all at the bottom? Okay, items. So let's see. They removed Crown. They removed Everfrost. Riftmaker. Now, this wasn't new, right? I think they changed it. I actually can't remember. Yeah, I'll update it with the Fallout. So I think that got changed. Luden's got made worse. So that was a downgrade. Malignance is cool, but there's not many champs that use it. Storm Surge was OP at the start, but it quickly got nerfed into the ground. But actually, like, I think they kind of did, like, this did change the meta for a bit, to be fair. Like, when Storm Surge was OP, champs that used Storm Surge well, like, were strong. Rocket Belt took a while. I think they didn't change until this year, but eventually it got good. Cosmic, kind of whatever. Horizon didn't really get used. It was bugged for a long time, and it just, like, wasn't that powerful. Cryptbloom. From what I remember, Cryptbloom also took a really long time to be used because Void was just better for a really long time. Then Cryptbloom became really good for a time. Then they nerfed again, I think. Or maybe they buffed Void. Maybe it was that. Now it's kind of back to Cryptbloom supremacy for the most part. Shadowflame. I don't think... Was Shadowflame new? I honestly can't remember. The problem is this is kind of skewed because I can't remember which items were like totally new or not. But like kind of looking down this... I'm not sure they really, like, added any items. I think they more just, like, kind of shifted things around, didn't they? Storm Surge was new, for sure. I think Hexblade was new. Sundered Sky, I suppose, is pretty new. And that actually was, like, I mean, it still is quite strong. All the Radiance, yeah, I guess. Yeah, I mean, I guess they have done some item changes. Like maybe I'm, like, more harsh on this because it feels like AP items or, like, mid lane items haven't been changed so much. I don't know. What are we talking about? We're talking about the changes that, like, Riot made. Yeah, I mean, I guess they've made some changes. I guess still, it's just, like, it's not really anything interesting. They're just all stat sticks, and there's nothing that really makes you think, oh, like, what champion could use this? You know what I mean? Like, I think the closest thing to that was probably Horizon. But even then, like, Horizon wasn't even that good on the champs that, like, use the passive, you know? But this is cool. I mean, I still hate passives, but, like, that is cool.
Mythic items got taken out. 2023 was also kind of barren. Being the last year of Mythics, we got some new items like Jakshul, Radiant Virtue, Heartsteel, Rod of Ages came back, Jungle got a quality of life update, and they reinstated the Chemdrake. But the essence of the game felt like the exact same as the year before. Altogether, 2023 didn't feel too different from 2024, which didn't feel too different from 2025. A number of you might disagree that seasons 13 and 14 were small for a new season, so out of consideration for that, let me give you examples of past seasons that fundamentally altered
Okay, yeah,
Legends.
let's see this.
The most recent example would assuredly have to be Mythic items being introduced in 2021. What made this so impactful was that it presented a complete and total overhaul of one of the most integral mechanics in the game, items. I'm not talking half a dozen, I'm talking quite literally every item in the game got changed more or less. Not just that, but we had a brand new class of items.
I honestly think Mythics would have been, like, almost completely fine if they didn't have the Mythic tag. Like, if you didn't have to just buy them, like, first, basically. If they were just regular items, I think it would have been fine. Like, if Gale Force were a regular item, personally, like, no problems with that. I know a lot of people disagree, but I actually don't mind these items themselves. In my mind, the biggest problem with it was, like, you had to buy them. I think getting rid of the choice is annoying.
Items that shaped your playstyle to a huge extent. For instance, it was the first time AD carries and bruisers had a dash item. There hasn't been an item overhaul this big in, like, forever. The whole shop UI had to get changed, and players spent the first month of preseason basically relearning the game on account of every single champion having to reconfigure their builds. Those are the kind of changes that made preseason so exciting. Even though solo queue rankings did not matter throughout this time, what kept it fresh and dynamic was all the stuff we had to playtest and experiment.
Yeah,
the craziest
that
part
is cool.
Relative to other preseasons, the Mythic item system was actually near the bottom in scope, which really goes to show you how different every new year of the game was, and all the more reason why League feels so stagnant today. Season 10 may not have had that many adjustments in the item and champion department, but what it did bring was a full expansion to the Dragon objective in the form of the Dragon Soul. The advent of Dragon Soul as well as the new superpowered Elder Dragon buff would change the late game experience of the game thereafter because of how massive those buffs were. Permanent global stat increases of that caliber were never seen before in the history of the game. If you take a look at Dragon Soul, any of them, they may as well be a 7th item. The new Elder Dragon buff may have single-handedly—
Dude, Dragon's been out this long, and, like, Chemtech Soul's still useless. I mean, I guess Chemtech Soul wasn't in the game back then, but I mean, I think Season 10 was the best season. I swear to God, if Riot just, like, copy-pasted Season 10, I'd be happy.
Or the average game time of all matches after 2020. When the community found out that Elder Dragon could execute below 25% health, people were going crazy. Before Season 10, objectives would have a measurable impact. However, you could still overcome them through calculated play or hunkering down until the temporary ones expired. But Dragon Soul and Elder Dragon gave you—
Yeah, that's kind of what I was saying earlier, where, like, there's, like, pros and cons to that, you know? Like, having the objectives be more powerful, like, makes them, like, feel good and feel better. But it also means the game is all about them, and there's, like, very little room for, like, doing other stuff. Like, the style that G2 played in, like, this is a game from 2019, I'm pretty sure. The style that they played here, I don't think would be possible in modern day League. Because, like, you're just forced into team fighting too often. Like, you couldn't play some sort of, like, 1-3-1 setup like this. So that's kind of sad, yeah.
Such an overwhelming lead that it would only be a matter of time before you lost. Statistically, the team with Dragon Soul averages an 80 to 90% win rate. It's nearly impossible to come back from. So even though 2020 didn't have that many changes in quantity, the new features they brought in completely warped our understanding of the mid to late game and made dragons go from an optimal thing you could skip a couple of to priority number 1.
Yeah, you have to find
them. And how
them.
many teams get anxious when the enemy team has 3 dragons and the 4th one is coming up? Were it not for Dragon Soul, that wouldn't be as big of a cause for concern. Arguably the largest updates I've ever seen made to the game would have to be Seasons 5 through 7. I say 5 through 7 because technically these changes happened over the course of 2 years. In a given patch, the most number of champions you'd see getting updates to their gameplay beyond the realm of buffs and nerfs is at most like 3. Even mid-scope updates don't come too often, which is why the class updates from 2015 to 2017 were so unprecedented.
Oh yeah, I remember these.
From version 5.16 to 7.9, approximately half the roster got reworked in some shape or form.
Yeah, that
Not
is
just no adjustments
crazy.
either, a number of them were significantly changed. Beginning with the Juggernaut update in 5.16, we had
Okay, I will say, I think a lot of these like updates were like kind of bad, at least at the time. Like they ended up being good, but they definitely took a little bit of time before like Riot figured it out, you know? It did take a little while.
Then the Marksman update in 5.22 saw retrofits to virtually the entire 80 carry roster. Caitlyn, Corki, Graves, Kog'Maw, Misfortune, and Quinn got the big ones, while the remaining were given small ones. 6.9 had the mage update, focusing on Brand, Cassiopeia, Malzahar, Vel'Koz, Vladimir, and Zyra, with minor updates given to 8 others. They then wrapped up with the Assassins in 6.22, then Tanks in 7.9.
Holy shit,
for 2
man.
years, they spent every preseason and midseason reworking champion movesets for upwards of half a dozen at a time. When that many cast members get simultaneously changed, especially categorically, you're essentially playing a brand new game all over again. When ADCs got mixed up in Preseason 6, you had to learn all their new quirks and stuff. Mid lane was changed a ton following the mid-season mage update. Then jungle, as well as mid once again, changed during the assassin update. By the time you settled into all the new things, Riot came in with even more new things. Again, the mid-season update was almost as big as the preseason ones, giving players 2 things to look forward to per year. The 0.9 of each year was usually around May, right as players were entering summer break or the
Yeah, that's actually crazy. Like mid-season used to be such a big thing. Like, yeah, the mid-season patch was huge. It like really was like you had to relearn like a lot of the game again, or like the meta. So that is kind of crazy though. Like now, like start of the season is pretty small, and mid-season like it doesn't exist.
Full semester. That was an optimal time for players to look forward to all the new content that they had to pick up. The bottom line is, League was changing on a fundamental level every season, keeping it fresh and exciting, albeit sometimes overwhelming. 2015 to 2020 was characterized by innovation and, more importantly, fearlessness. Riot did not care what the consequences of their ambitious changes were. They were focused on doing big things every half a year for better or worse to maintain a dynamite experience of the game, and it worked. In my opinion, the golden years of League were during that time. For all the complaints people had about tank meta, Ardent Sensor meta, ADC in 2017, what have you, I can't think of a time when people were more excited to tune into LCS, watch streamers for hours on end, and every top League YouTuber pulling easily high 6 to low 7 figure views per video without even trying. Despite how random it felt like Riot was doing all these changes over the years, to some extent they knew what they were doing. There was a huge focus on modernization, abandoning their previous outdated conventions of champion and game design and giving everything a fresh coat of paint. New items every season, new champion kits every season, BGUs coming out and receiving just as much attention and hype as actual new champions.
I think one like really, I mean, I kind of agree with this. I think 2018 to probably like 2020 was like the peak of League in my opinion. I think one thing that's like really underrated here is that like League is a game that is carried pretty heavily, I think, by its esport. You know, like League has always been a good game, obviously. Like it wouldn't be so popular if it weren't. But I think like what made League, you know, really different to a lot of other games is like its esport was insane. Like its esport was like by far the best, right? And I think when you change the game in a really, really big way, you lower the gap, or I guess, no, sorry, you increase the gap between like the former best teams or whatever and like the current like up and comers or whatever. Like without these big changes, I don't think G2 ever would have like really popped off, right? And I think it's pretty unlikely that a Western team ever dominates again unless like things get changed. Like, I don't know if you guys remember this, but a couple times though, like when, I think it was when Damwon lost to G2. Damwon got like flamed for ages for like by the Korean community for like playing outdated League of Legends and saying like all the Korean coaches should be fired and stuff like that for teaching them the game this way and stuff, you know? Obviously now, like clearly they've called back up, right, and taken over. But like I'm kind of getting at here is I think that for League in the West to really pop off, like Western teams need to be competitive. And again, one of the ways to kind of artificially, make that happen is to change the game in big ways. Because since the East has like a much better solo queue experience, if they're just allowed to like, play the game over and over, skirm against each other over and over on like essentially the same game for years at a time, they are just going to pull ahead, right? But when things are new or when things are changed going into an event, right? Like that big Juggernaut patch, for example, before, I can't remember which event it was, like a Worlds or an MSI or something, you know, Western teams are able to compete a lot better. So there is something to be said for that too, because esport is so important for League of Legends.
Speaking of which, Riot was less concerned about making champions that sold skins or were overloaded, choosing instead to try all sorts of wacky ideas, whether they did or didn't turn out well. You had Bard, Echo, Tom Kench, Kindred, Alawi, Jhin, Aurelion Sol, Talia, Clan, Ivern, Zaya, Rakan. It wasn't until late 2017
holy
when
moly,
they
they made
started to
some
pump out the
sick
stupid
champs.
champs like Kayn, Pre-Nerf Vorn, Kai'Sa, Pyke, etc. They didn't care. They just wanted to innovate and try new things, a stark contrast to how things feel now. The biggest mid-season update we had since 2022 was the durability patch, but all that did was make champions tankier. We haven't had the same groundbreaking updates as we did during the first decade. For most of the second decade, I feel like Riot's been playing things too safe. Anytime they make changes, it comes off in a way that's more contained in scale or an accessory to an already established mechanic. They only rework or
I don't know if that's quite fair. I think the durability patch was like a pretty big patch, honestly. I think it did change the game quite a bit. I think that's like, whether or not, like, I'm not sure I agree really with the durability patch. Like, personally, I don't really like the change, but I think it was a change. So I guess I don't agree with that too much. It was this guy. I'll link the video after. Prefer to have game-changing updates more often. Yeah, I think everyone does. Or, like, almost everyone. Shok, someone broke up with me, but in their message, they said so many fake and untrue things. I finally read the message. After reading it, low-key irked me because that shit ain't true, you know what I mean? Yeah, I know what you mean, sis. I'm here for you, girl. Or whatever the kids say.
1 or 2 champions at most, or just a couple items, not 15 at one time. Adding new objectives like Atakhan feats and Void Grubs may appear to give off the same impact as Dragon's Soul and whatnot, but the reason they don't is because none of them really change the central experience of the game. Void Grubs makes it more convenient to take towers, but it's not like a team with all grubs pushes that much further than a team without. Ruinous Atakhan offers a big stat boost that compounds the effects of other objectives, but taking Atakhan without any objectives is basically just an extra 25 or so adaptive force and half a level. Though it did get nerfed, it was always treated as an objective that people take when there's nothing else to do while waiting for
Okay, I mean, I disagree with that. Like, that's a lot of stats. I just think it's boring.
Nothing else to do while waiting for Baron. As for Voracious Atakhan, they never should have added it to the game. Losing a Ruinous Atakhan though doesn't carry the same repercussions as a Baron or Dragon's Soul. Not that it needs to be. Having too many game-winning objectives is part of why League is extremely stressful to play these days.
Yes, 100% agree.
The team is only building off their current foundation rather than trying to do crazy new stuff that makes the player base have to figure out the game in new ways. A prominent discussion topic as of late has been whether or not the removal of mythic items was a good decision. Some are even going so far as to say League was better off with it still being in the game as opposed to without. When you consider how many egregious metas we had like the Stridebreaker meta, Chemtank meta, Divine Sunder meta, Sunfire meta, Goredrinker meta, Prowler's Claw meta, Dustblade meta, Everfrost meta, and so on, the notion that people want it back may sound absurd, but it's not so much that people literally want mythics back, more that people miss the days when the game was unpredictable and dynamic. In essence, a non-negligible amount of people want sweeping changes on a grand scale even if it might lead to stupid more than Riot playing it safe and not doing a whole lot.
I think
it might seem counterintuitive to want League of Legends to flip upside down twice a year when the goal is to master the game and consistently climb. But I've been told that more and more people are switching to TOT and Arena not only because they're more fun to play, but also because those game modes have been getting the same content updates that League used to. In Arena, there's an absurd new thing happening every single week it seems. League, on the other hand, has remained more or less the same throughout this entire time. If you quit back in Season 4 and came back in Season 7, you had to relearn the game because of how different it was, but if you quit back in Season 12 and came back now, I would argue it's still recognizable for most players. The question is, however, can Riot even make that many changes? A popular video released back in 2017 or 2018 if I can recall was from Doublelift on the downsides of a constantly changing game, in which he underscored how exhausting it is to keep up with all that Riot was doing throughout that time. For the most part, I agreed with the sentiment that Riot needed to slow down a bit, especially when it came to champions being buffed and nerfed too much, as well as new champions being the overloaded messes they were. Logically speaking, they finished updating the majority of the roster, so there's no reason to keep updating anymore, right? Somewhat, but even then there's still more things they can do that won't necessarily feature creep the game. Or frankly, maybe they should. I feel like Riot's only hope in restoring interest to League is by doing something completely out of left field. Maybe half a dozen features at once instead of one every 3 years, or perhaps a complete reimagining of Summoner's Rift, making a brand new map or something. Voice chat even, anything to convince players that League has changed. some new direction or initiative that paves a new future for the game rather than preserving the status quo. The fact that more players are excited for the new game mode and more players are moving to Arena or TFT or quitting the game and playing something else means it's not just the toxicity of the game that's responsible for this gradual exodus. People might just be bored of the game. New changes will bring them back for maybe a month or two, but then they go right back to whatever they were doing before since League has gone back to
I actually agree with that. I think like the toxicity thing, like don't get me wrong, the toxicity thing is annoying, but it's like always been a part of League, right? Like people have put up with it because the game has been so good. And I think you notice it more like if you're not having as much fun in the game, because it's like if you're not having fun in the game and it's toxic, it's like, you know, at that point, like, why bother?
Going for something as risky as a new Summoner's Rift might not be possible due to red tape, so I suppose the lowest risk, highest reward would be to go back to sweeping gameplay changes. Maybe, I don't know, make an Elemental Baron. In Season 14, they made 3 distinct Barons, but those Barons all give the same buff. Perhaps different Baron buffs for different Barons would be a place to start. Another option would be to speed up the VGU project and finally update those old champions, though I do understand why it's not a popular course of action financially speaking. It doesn't matter at this point, Riot has to do something big. Other creators are talking about it and the players are talking about it too. The sooner and bigger they do it, the better. So what do you guys think about all this? Do you agree or disagree with my points? If you disagree, let me know in the comments why, and if you agree, what are some ideas you have in mind? I'd love to hear them.
Yeah, it was a pretty good video. I'll link this one to you guys. I think I agree with some of this. I agree with most of it, I guess, or like the overall theme that like there needs to be more things. I still think that like most of the changes need to be like meta changes. Like what he said at the end about like an Elemental Baron. Like personally, I don't think it would do anything. It wouldn't like change for me at all. You know, it's stuff like, okay, let me open up like one of my tier lists, right? Like I just think like the mid meta just like almost never changes, you know? And like, so that feels extremely boring when you just see the same champions over and over. Like if I just open up, where's my last tier list? Okay, like this one. How long ago was this? 1514 and we're on patch 0.17. Okay, so we're like a little bit further in. Hold on. Okay, so what did I have on my tier list at this time? Yeah, like, are those not just the same mids that are OP now? You know? 3 patches later. Like, okay, like, are any of these champions in the top here, like, not super good still? Azir got nerfed, he got buffed back up. I think TF took a little nerf from what I remember. I think Ari maybe fallen off a tiny bit, but, like, ultimately, these are, like, the same champs, and this was, like, a full month ago, okay? So how about we go further back, right? Because a month's not like a ridiculous amount of time. Let's go to like, here's one 4 months ago. Let's see what the mid lane meta was 4 months ago. Okay, it's the same shit, man. Like, okay, I've moved some things around, like I tiered them up, but like look how many things are still the same, right? And look how many things are still like really weak. There are a few things that are higher. Like I guess you could say like, okay, TF's quite a bit better than he was back then. I think Kiana's buff was like pretty good, but again, like she is better in jungle. Other than that, like it's basically the same. You know, again, like there are like things have moved maybe like a tiny bit within their tiers or whatever, but ultimately this is the same meta as mid was like 4 months ago. And then, okay, let's go even more extreme. And let's look at a mid lane meta from like last year maybe. So, where's one from the previous season? I used to post a lot of videos. Okay, 14.20. Okay, 11 months ago. Let's take a look at this one. Okay, so there are definitely some things that are different here. So, like, what is, like, the big thing? I think LeBlanc is definitely not as good as she is now. I think a lot of these champions have become, like, a lot weaker. Things like Azir got brought up. So it's not like there's like literally no changes, but like you'll see again, there are a lot of like the repeat champions in here. And part of that is just because of, it's because there's a lot of champions that just do the same thing that other champs do. So there's like a lot of overlap, right? Like for example, whenever Talia is meta, like you probably won't play Cassio because like Talia is just a better version of her. And so if Talia has been meta for like whatever 3 years, then like Cassio has not been meta for 3 years or whatever, right? Now I won't say that there's been like no changes at all, like no meta changes at all during that time, because there have been things like, you know, there was that like 80 carry meta for a couple months, and there was an AP jungler meta. Like sometimes there are things, but like I don't know if you guys remember why those changes came about. So The reason AP junglers became really strong is because of Faded Ashes. I can't remember if Faded Ashes got added or if it got buffed, but for whatever reason, like Faded Ashes became really, really strong, right? So suddenly, the game in jungle was about like, okay, like what champs can use Faded Ashes? And it was things like Lilia and Zyra and stuff. And then because you had AP junglers, now you needed to play AD mids. And the combination of, Again, I can't remember if they buffed Fleet or if Fleet was just always secretly giga broken. Oh, no, they added Absorb Life. That's right. So because they added Absorb Life and because they added Faded Ashes, that completely changed the mid-meta. Now, they did obliterate it later because, admittedly, I think that meta was, like, pretty unhealthy. But it was something pretty different. And that was caused by a pretty small change, right? Like, it was just an item and a rune in combination with, like, 2 different roles that really changed that. So I think if Riot did the same thing where they, you know, change items, they change roles, they add new ones, sorry, not roles, runes. Yeah, add new runes, add, like, a whole new tree, add, like, you know, new items, new components. I think the meta will kind of change itself. They don't need to spend, like, a ton of time going through and, you know, editing each champion individually. They could, but I think it's like a lot of effort, and a lot of the champions are pretty modernized. Like, I think there are things that could be re-updated. Like, I think things like Vega or like Zillion or whatever, there could be some pretty cool changes as champ. Like, I remember, doesn't Zillion and like Wild Rift have like a AoE projectile slowing field? Like, that's super sick. You know, I don't know how easy it would be to add, but like, clearly they have the ideas, right? And maybe they don't want to put in the effort to actually like making it happen, but you know, they could. And I think the easier way to do it is with items, but they could do it directly.